Good evening all and welcome to day 4 of the 12 days of Creepmas. Tonight we're going to be going under the bed for a truly frightening collection of scary stories. So watch out while you sleep. Don't forget that you can grab 70% off during these 12 days over at Patreon for a bunch of exclusive content. But for now it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. When I was maybe 5 years old, I had solidly outgrown my toddler bed and was in need of some place to sleep. So my father got an old bed frame at an auction. I don't know where the mattress came from. Knowing him, it was the one that was on the bed whenever he got it. The first night, my mum read me a story and kissed me goodnight as usual, but I didn't go to sleep immediately. The new bed was huge compared to my old one. I put my arms all the way out to the sides, and they were still on the bed. I put my feet down all the way, and couldn't feel the bottom of the bed. I started to slide down under the covers, trying to find the bottom of the bed with my toes. Finally, my toes hit the bottom of the bed, and I pushed them out to touch the footboard, when something touched my feet. I pulled them back, but I was a sane, rational kid and assumed it had to be the blankets bunched up down there. So I pulled my feet back down. Again it touched my feet, then it moved. I began screaming bloody murder, and my parents came in and checked the room, finding nothing, and assured me that it was either blankets or, worst case, a mouse. But from that night on, every time I put my feet down, something was there. At first, just all the way to the bottom, but then it started to come closer. A quarter of the way up the bed, then half, then 3/4. Until if I slept in any position other than curled up at the head of the bed, this thing would be there. It grabbed my feet. It moved under the covers, and every time I lifted them it would vanish. If I put my feet off the side of the bed, I could feel it brushing them. Sometimes it would grab my feet or ankles. Never pull, never leave a mark. I only vaguely remember those times, since they were early on, and I soon stopped putting my feet off the bed, and would jump up 3 feet away to get to it. But I know it had fingers, hands, but they didn't feel right. And it wasn't just me. The same thing happened to all of my friends. Sleepovers always ended up moving to the living room after they didn't heed my warnings about the foot of the bed. My parents were no help. After the first few times checking and finding nothing, they assured me it had to be my imagination and basically gave me instructions for how to deal with a panic attack. We moved and I thought whatever it was would go away. But it didn't. One night one of my friends was sleeping over. We were probably 13 or so. She woke me up in the middle of the night saying someone or something had grabbed her foot. I told her not to put her feet down at the bottom or off the sides and went back to sleep. Other friends just said they didn't like the bed, and I didn't push. I knew it sounded crazy to say something was grabbing their feet. Fast forward to when I was 15. One day, I thought sleeping like this is stupid. I didn't know what was going on, but I'd had enough. So I put my feet down all the way to the end of the bed, and something touched them, and I instinctively pulled them back. No, just no. By that time I was a young punk who broke horses for a living, and I wasn't scared of anything, and this wasn't going to fly. So I stuck my feet down again and it touched me. It didn't move my feet. It moved slowly up from my toes towards my ankle. Now I was confused. It felt like a hand but made of cloth, with no bones, like the hand of a cloth doll. What the hell was going on? I grabbed it between my feet, a little squishy but again like a doll, and I started to pull it up towards the top of the bed. I don't know why I didn't just throw the covers off. I think I wanted to get a good hold of it first, but when I sat up to get my hands down there, it pulled away. I saw it zip back under the blankets and vanish between the mattress and footboard. There was no room for someone to be hiding in or under the bed. I lost it. At 3 a.m. I yanked the mattress and box spring off and dragged the frame into the old barn, where it sat for the next 20 years. Unfortunately, removing the bed didn't solve the problem. My closet light would come on and the doors began opening on their own at night. They were the kind that slides accordion style, but would pop off the track and open straight out like wings. My bed was positioned so I could see it in the closet, with them like that. We tried to fix them again and again, but nothing worked. Even if we couldn't get them off, they popped out at night. The light was a mystery as well, as the switch was being turned, and there didn't seem to be any wiring faults. Then one night when the doors opened, I saw a shadow against the wall. Again, no. Screw the noise. I was probably 17 to 18 at the time. I grabbed the toolbox and took the doors down. I emptied the closet, took the shelves out, and moved the mattress. Nothing happened the next night, and for a few weeks after I moved the mattress back. I moved out when I was 20, and one of my brothers took that room. A few years ago I noticed he'd gotten the old bed frame out of the barn and was using it. When I next visited a few weeks later, the frame was gone. He said every time he went to bed, something grabbed his feet. This happened 5 years ago, when I was 18, living out of home for the first time while attending university in Australia. Instead of living on campus, I moved into a sweet triple-story house with 2 other girls, friends of mine, and for a bunch of students it felt ridiculously adult. I got the master bedroom on the 2nd floor, front-facing with a long, narrow layout that never made much sense. The door was at one end, 4 or 5 meters away, and the other end were my ensuite and private balcony. Side by side in between was my bed. At first, the room was mostly empty. It was too narrow for much furniture, but over time, I crammed it full of bookshelves and dressers, which created a tight little 30 to 40 centimeter wide path around the room. Navigating it meant tiptoeing and sideways shuffling unless you were willing to clamber over things, and to make it feel less cramped, I stuck up a bunch of mirrors. From any spot in the room, I could see myself at least twice, sometimes even 4 times. A funhouse effect I didn't think too hard about. Also, I was dumb and never locked the balcony door. 2nd floor, I figured who climbs the balconies? Well, one night I was in the shower. I left the ensuite door slightly ajar. Ventilation was terrible, and I liked to let the steam out. From inside the shower, I angled myself just right, and could catch bits of my reflection in the mirrors. I was mid-chorus of Don't Fear the Reaper, being very dramatic about it, when I opened my eyes and saw him. He was reflected in one of the mirrors, a man in a red jumper lying under my bed. He was scratching his head, his face turned away. If he hadn't moved at that exact moment, I might have looked straight into his eyes and blown everything. As it was, I nearly screamed right then and there, but I didn't. I kept singing. I'm a theatre student, if nothing else, so the show must go on. I backed up into the corner of the shower so I wouldn't risk seeing him again. I kept singing, poorly I'm sure, but kept it together. The room was too narrow to run. No way I could make it to the bathroom door without him grabbing my ankle the second I stepped out. My phone was on the bed. Screaming would just draw him out faster. I was stuck, naked and wet, with a man under my bed. I tilted the shower head away and reached for my towel, wrapped it tightly. I didn't know if this guy wanted to terminate me or just catch a show, but either way I wasn't staying in that bathroom. Still humming the guitar solo, I flung the door open, took a running start, and jumped right over him. I landed hard on the bed, bounced, launched myself to the balcony door, yanked it open and ran, vaulted the railing, still wrapped in a towel, and scared the absolute hell out of my neighbors as I hit the ground screaming about a man in my room. My housemates who were downstairs saw me plummet past the window and land in a flailing heap on the lawn. I twisted my ankle, bruised the hell out of my knee, but the towel at least stayed on. They ran outside and I screamed the story at them, and at the neighbors who, bless them, ran inside to help. But Mr. Under the Bed was gone. He slipped out the back door. The police were called and they found his bright red jumper ditched 2 doors down because apparently subtlety isn't every stalker's strong suit. But not the man himself. he was never caught. 5 years later, I tell this story with a bit more laugh and a lot more wine, but I still lock every single door and window before bed. Even the balcony door, even on the 3rd floor. No exceptions. Once you've seen a man lying under your bed, you don't make the same mistake twice. When my aunt was in high school, she was a knockout. One of those girls who turned heads without trying. Homecoming queen, beauty pageant, always the center of attention. Whether she wanted to be or not, men stared, boys bragged, and grown men made disgusting comments loud enough for her mum to hear. Well, one day, she and my grandmother were standing in line at the grocery store. It was bright outside, early afternoon, and the place was crowded, so you'd think it was safe. A man got in line behind them. He was in his late 30s or maybe early 40s, wearing a windbreaker, a ball cap pulled low, and not obviously dangerous. But the moment my grandmother turned her attention to the cashier, he leaned towards my aunt and started talking. "How old are you? Is that your mum? What's for dinner tonight? Do you have any sisters as pretty as you?" That kind of slow, grooming patter. No space between the questions, just watching her squirm. My aunt was 16. Eventually my grandmother caught wind of it. She turned, smiled tightly, and said they needed to be going and to have a nice day. She didn't make a scene. She didn't want to. He hadn't touched her. But as they were loading groceries into the car, he walked up again, right to the side of the car. My aunt was in the passenger seat, her hands frozen on a plastic bag full of apples. He looked at my grandmother and smiled. "You should be a model. You should keep a close eye on her. Boys her age only want one thing." My grandmother told my aunt to get in. Then she turned to the man, calmly but firmly, and said, "If you speak with us again, I'll call the security guard over." He stood there for a moment, muttering about how he didn't mean any harm, glaring at my aunt as she shut the door between them. Then he walked away. They didn't think much more of it. Creeps were everywhere. That's what you told yourself back then, just to keep going. That night, my aunt went to bed around 11. The house had 4 bedrooms, 4 women, my grandmother and her 3 daughters. No men, no dogs. Sometime after midnight, she woke up. There was a breeze on her face, quite chilly. Her window was somehow open, yet she never remembered opening it. Half asleep, she was about to get up to shut it when she felt the mattress shift slightly under her, as if something had moved. A hand touched her leg under the covers. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. 1,000 thoughts collided behind her eyes. Her room was on the 2nd floor. The only door was across from her bed. Between her and the door, someone was lying on the floor. He didn't say anything at first. Then under the blankets a hand moved again, sliding upwards, and she heard him whispering to himself, soft, manic and feverish, his breath ragged. She didn't understand all of what he was saying, just bits. "So soft, stay still, pretty girl." She could hear something wet, rhythmic. She was 16. What she did next was pure instinct. She screamed a single, loud scream and flung herself over the side of her bed, over him. She didn't even touch the floor. Her feet barely grazed his arm as she ran. She sprinted into the hallway, still screaming, and collided with my grandmother, who came flying out of her room in a panic. My aunt couldn't stop shaking. She told her what happened in broken pieces, and her voice kept crackling. Her knees buckled as she dropped to the hallway carpet while my grandma ran into the room. The man was gone. The window was still wide open, curtains still fluttering, but he had left something behind. The police later found the ladder leaning against the side of the house. It wasn't theirs. He'd brought it with him. But worse were the pictures. Polaroids, dozens of them, scattered around her bed like cigarette ash, taken at the grocery store outside the house, through the bedroom window, one in the backyard as she bent down to pet the dog. He'd been watching her, following her, and waiting for the opportunity. The police took everything as evidence, but he was never caught. They never even found a name. That night, my grandmother called her neighbor, who came over with a shotgun and sat on the porch till sunrise. No one slept. Nobody talked much. My aunt moved her bed away from the window the next day and started double locking every door in the house. She stopped wearing makeup and wouldn't go out alone, and never slept with the window open again. They say, hey, we got a free ladder out of it, but they still don't use it. It just stays in the shed behind the door, which always remains locked, of course. I was maybe 5 or 6 in the summer of 1990, and we lived in the quiet suburb outside of Dallas. It was one of those cookie-cutter neighborhoods where every house looked the same. I wasn't what you'd call an observant child, whimsical and distracted and always in my own world, perhaps, but I remember that day clearly. It was hot, incredibly hot, and I'd been playing in the backyard for most of the afternoon. My mum had errands to run, and like most kids, I waited until she was standing at the front door with her purse in hand before I finally dragged myself inside. Feet dusty, face flushed. "Did you shut the sliding door?" she asked, already halfway through locking the front. "Yeah," I said automatically. I didn't even know what I was saying, I just wanted my Happy Meal. We came back around 6 that evening. The sky was turning amber, and the cicadas were humming loudly. I'll never forget the moment the front door swung open and Mum froze, because the sliding glass door, the one leading to the backyard, was wide open. She snapped her head towards me. "I thought you shut it." I mumbled an apology, too young to fully grasp what I'd truly done. Of course she scolded me, but it didn't last long. The day moved on, dinner was made, the news hummed from the TV in the living room, and like any ordinary night, it was eventually time for bed. She tucked me in with the usual routine of a kiss on the forehead, blankets up to the chin, and headed downstairs to run a bath. I was supposed to be sleeping, but of course I wasn't. I was 5, and wired from the chicken nuggets. I lay on my bed with a few of my micro machines, making sound effects with the little cars flying across the sheets. And then, the bed moved. It was like a faint nudge, but it was enough to make me stop and look around. I thought maybe it was me, that I had somehow shifted it in a strange way. I waited, shrugged and went back to playing. A few minutes later, the foot of my bed lifted and slammed down. The impact jolted me off my elbows, and I stared at the end of the mattress wide-eyed and frozen. And then something started rising. A dark, vague shape, like a shadow detaching itself. It was climbing from under the bed, pushing upwards through the dark like it had been waiting there for hours, and I shrieked. I launched off the bed like a cannon, Olympic jumping straight into the door, my feet barely touching the floor. I flung the door open and collided with my mum on the stairs. She caught me mid-sob, and I gasped out the words in bursts, trying to tell her what happened. And her face changed as I spoke. She didn't say I imagined it. She didn't tell me I was dreaming. She just grabbed my hand and took me to the kitchen, picked up the phone, and in a voice I'd never heard before, sharp and whispery and terrified, dialed 911. Then we ran to the car and locked ourselves inside. We sat in the driveway, windows rolled up despite the heat, and I remember watching the house, our house, watching the upstairs windows glow to life, then the hallway light, then the staircase. Someone was moving inside. A few minutes later the police arrived and they swarmed in, guns drawn, shouting into the house, but found nothing. No sign of forced entry, no disturbed drawers, no missing electronics or footprints. The officers said we probably caught someone in the act, some would-be burglar who bolted when we pulled up. But I saw it. It didn't move like a person nor feel human. After that I didn't sleep in my room for a month. I refused. I slept on the couch, in my mum's room, anywhere but there. To this day, if I come home alone at night, I turn on every light and check every room and every closet and under every bed. I suppose after experiencing something like that, it's understandable that I can't help it. This happened when I was a kid. I don't remember exactly when it started, only that it was early on in elementary school. I'd been laying there trying to fall asleep, when the mattress would dip, gently at first, just enough to make me freeze, like someone carefully sat down next to me trying not to wake me. Sometimes after the dip, I'd feel pressure shift closer, like a body leaning in to whisper. The air above me felt different. I closed my eyes so tightly they'd hurt and pretend I didn't notice. I wouldn't move a muscle. Somehow I was convinced that staying perfectly still kept me safe. For a long time nothing more happened, just the dips and the pressure and the feeling of being watched from below. It was enough to scare me, but not enough to make me scream. Then came the night I tried to be brave. I remember the room being warm, the sheets sticking to my arms a little, and this strange mix of courage and stupidity bubbling up. I don't know why, maybe I was sick of being scared, or maybe I was just overtired. I rolled onto my stomach, hung my arms over the edge, and slowly reached my hand down into the darkness beneath the frame. I didn't even make it to the floor. The instant my hand passed under the mattress, something wrapped around my wrist and yanked. It wasn't a light tug. It was a solid, fast, jerking pull that dragged my entire upper body off the bed before I could even gasp. I felt my ribs hit the wooden edge as I slammed back onto the mattress. The sound of it was so loud in the quiet room, it almost didn't feel real. I scrambled back, practically clawing to the center of the bed, frantically pulling the blankets over myself. My heart was punching so hard in my chest, I thought whatever grabbed me could hear it. I remember being so terrified that even blinking felt too loud. I didn't sleep at all that night, and after that things escalated. The dips became heavier. The leaning in felt closer. Sometimes I'd feel the entire bed shift, like whatever was underneath pressed its back against the whole frame while moving. And the worst part is that I never screamed or called my parents. I laid there frozen night after night, hoping that if I didn't react it would lose interest. But it didn't. This went on for years, constantly. Then around 13 something finally snapped in me. I was half awake when the mattress dipped sharply, the way it did when the presence was particularly close. I felt the weight lean in, like it was checking to see if I was awake, and for the first time ever, I wasn't just scared but angry. Without thinking, I shot upright so fast I nearly got dizzy. I pointed toward the edge of the bed and yelled, "What the hell are you doing?" My voice cracked, my hands shaking, but I was making a fist. And the moment I yelled, everything stopped. There were no more dips. No more breathing in the dark, nothing. It never happened again. Now, years later, I still don't know what to make of it. Was it some kind of childhood sleep disorder, a fear-induced hallucination, or my brain trying to fill in the gaps in the dark? Or could it be that there was actually something under the bed all those nights that backed off only when it realized I wasn't playing along anymore? I don't have an answer, but I'd love to know if any of you think you know what it could have been. I was 23 when this happened. I'm 25 now, and still live in the same place. The ground floor of an old Victorian that was converted into a duplex. The neighborhood is rough, with cheap motels, broken porch lights, but I'd like to say it's safe enough. My roommate, a casino security guard and friend of mine, lived with me. We had separate rooms and separate lives. The woman upstairs never left her unit. At the time, I was recovering from major leg surgery and had dropped out of college. I was finally off crutches, though still limping. My days were slow. That night, my boyfriend and I were watching movies in the front room. My roommate and his girlfriend were in his room at the back of the house. Eventually, one of our friends wandered in, already drunk, and collapsed on the couch. My roommate's girlfriend brought another guy with her who passed out immediately. No one thought much of it, just another chaotic night. A loud noise came from the back of the house. Something clattered hard. My boyfriend and I paused the movie but shrugged it off. Between the couple being loud and everything going on with the drunk guys, it could have been anything. Eventually the house quieted. Our movie ended and we went to bed. My bedroom is in the middle of the house. It shares walls with both the living room and my roommate's room. The bed was pushed up against the outside wall beneath an old sash window. The window looks out onto the beams and vertical posts that support a small balcony upstairs. Ugly things close to the glass, but I never thought much of them. My boyfriend stripped down and jumped into bed. I started undressing, then froze. The window was open too far, and the screen was gone. I panicked. I had a cat that was strictly indoors, and my first thought was that she got out. Frantic, I dropped to the floor and looked under the bed, thinking perhaps she'd crawled underneath. That's when I saw the dark shape. I reached in, but it wasn't fur. It was fabric, a dark hoodie, and someone was inside it. I touched his arm. At first, bizarrely, I laughed and thought it was one of our friends that was playing a prank. "Hey," I say lightly, "I think there's someone under here." Then I lowered my face to his, and I didn't recognize him. "I don't know this guy," I said louder this time. Something in my voice must have changed because my boyfriend sat bolt upright, naked and alert. "Grab the gun," he said. I was closer to the closet and he didn't move. "Stay where you are," he said towards the bed. The figure remained. I threw my boyfriend his robe. He grabbed the gun, cocked it and pointed it at the bed. The guy still didn't move, and I ran to wake my roommate. He came in half-dressed, and now there were 3 of us, 2 men, 1 armed, all staring down the narrow crawl space beneath my bed. We told the guy to come out slowly, hands where we could see them. He did. He crawled out like some shadow, squeezed from the floorboards. A teenager, scrawny and pale, his hoodie sagged off him. His eyes jittered from side to side, unnervingly fast. Definitely high. We searched him. In his pockets, we found Johnny's Lube, a handful of call girl advertisements torn from the back of an adult magazine, a bottle of what he claimed was Vicodin, but was extra-strength ibuprofen, a folded piece of paper with numbers and names scribbled on it, and a business card from a youth probation officer, and in his back pocket, a pair of my dirty underwear stained with blood. That's when the real revulsion hit, hot and bone deep. We found his school ID. He was a kid from here. He lived in one of the seediest motels in town with his mother. You know the kind, pay by the hour, flickering vacancy signs. His life spelled out in ink right there, and we asked him what the hell he was doing under our bed. But he wouldn't meet our eyes. "I heard them doing it, so I thought I could get in on it." That was his answer. He'd been riding around the neighborhood, heard my roommates' animalistic screeching through the windows in their session, and decided somehow that was an invitation. He climbed up the scaffolding, slid through the window, and tucked himself under my bed with his sad little kit. We were horrified, but also conflicted. He wasn't armed, he hadn't hurt me, he cooperated the moment we found him, didn't fight, didn't threaten, just sat there embarrassed, nodding and apologizing. He looked ashamed, hollowed out. We saw the signs of neglect, of a lost kid living in a garbage world who'd gotten so desperate that he turned into something disgusting without realizing it. We debated calling the cops, but there were real risks. He was clearly on probation, possibly tied to local gang activity through family, and a call to the police could bring more problems, not fewer. So we made a decision. We let him go. We kept his ID, his motel address, his probation officer number, and told him if we ever saw him on our street again, it wouldn't end with a warning. We'd call the cops or worse. He thanked us. My roommate walked him home, his hand gripping the kid's handlebars like a leash, until he saw him slink back into the dump of a motel room and close the door. The others, my roommate's girlfriend, the drunk passed out on the couch, slept through the whole thing. After that, I stopped opening my window at night. I don't think I'll ever stop checking under my bed either. We never saw him again, thankfully. I had 2 separate incidents when I was a kid, and even now I'm not totally sure what was real and what might have been some kind of dream state. The first incident involved a monster that would appear from behind my dresser. This wasn't a one-time thing. It happened pretty frequently. I can still remember the sound of its voice, and for a long time I believed every bit of it actually happened. I would see this figure come out from the space behind my dresser. I always thought it looked strange and shriveled, like a big black raisin. It was small, wrinkly, and completely dark, and had these really skinny arms and legs attached to a rounded torso. The whole body looked dried out, almost like a prune. It was maybe around 5 feet tall, which felt huge to me at the time. The part that stuck with me the most was its voice. It sounded exactly like someone who had been smoking their entire life, super raspy, like those voices from an anti-smoking commercial. Every time it showed up, it would talk to me in that gravelly tone, and every time, I was convinced it was really there. One night, my mum came into the room while I was seeing this thing, and I remember her telling it to leave, like she was annoyed but not scared. The monster grumbled something under its breath, almost like it was irritated too, but then acted like, "Fine, I'm going." Right after that, I heard the front door open and close. I even remember seeing the shadow of the door down the hallway move when it happened, which made everything feel more convincing. Years later, my mum told me that I had been talking in my sleep all those nights. She said she went along with it because she didn't want to scare me or wake me up abruptly. She insists the door noises and everything else were just coincidences, or things I imagined while half asleep. That's probably the explanation, but it was so vivid at the time I genuinely believed it had been real for most of my childhood. After that night when she told him to leave, the monster never came back. The second incident happened at my cousin's house. I was sleeping on the floor right next to their bed, when I distinctly remember hearing several people under the bed. They sounded like they were talking and playing some kind of game, almost like a group of adults playing a card game or poker. But I never saw anything. I just heard the voices, but the memory is still really clear, and to this day I have no idea what that was supposed to be. Both of these things happened when I was really young, and looking back I could admit there's a good chance I was half dreaming both times. But the details were so clear and consistent that part of me sometimes wonders if there was more to it. When I was around 8 or 9, we lived in a small rented place in a quiet neighborhood in northern Oregon. My bedroom was tiny, barely enough space for a bed, a desk, and a narrow path between them. I'd never had trouble sleeping there until that night. I woke up suddenly wide awake, like someone had snapped their fingers next to my ear. The house was silent, and I remember lying there staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what exactly had woken me. And that's when I heard a low, rough growl come from directly beneath my bed. It was not the creaking of wood, nor the pipes, nor the house settling. It was something alive. The closest thing I can compare it to is a dog trying to yank a toy out of your hands, teeth bared, breath hot, frustrated and mean. Except we didn't have a dog or a cat or any pets. I froze instantly. I don't think I even breathed. The growl came again, louder this time, vibrating through the mattress. I could feel it in my ribs. Whatever it was right below me, just inches away, and for a long moment I couldn't move. I lay there, every muscle locked, listening into that thing breathe under my breath. Then instinct kicked in. I launched myself off the mattress and sprinted out the room so fast I barely touched the floor. I ran straight into my parents' room and dove between them, shaking and trying to get the words out. They were confused and half asleep, but they followed me back with a flashlight and checked under the bed. In the closet, behind the furniture, nothing. Not a sound, nor shadow, not even a draft. They tried to convince me it was a dream, but I know it wasn't. I wasn't groggy, nor disoriented. I was fully awake when something growled inches underneath me. I still think about it sometimes, how real it sounded, how heavy the breathing was, and how the mattress seemed to hum with that low, angry rumble. But I've never found a logical explanation for this story. My sister is 2 years older than me. We shared a room until she left for college at 19. This story happened long before that, before I was ever born. It's something she told me when I was little, something my mother and I still talk about. My sister, though, doesn't like to discuss it. She says that it was just a dream. But she didn't always say that. She was 2, maybe 3 when it started. Back then she had her own room. I've seen a photo from the time. A small white metal bed tucked in the corner. Soft light filtering through the curtains. They'd only lived in the house for 2 months when she began crying out at night. My parents would rush in and she'd be sitting up, eyes wide, pointing at the floor. "There's a monster under my bed." Typical toddler fears. My dad figured it was just a bad dream, but our mum, who had strange things happen in her life, wasn't so quick to dismiss it. The crying continued night after night, and slowly the stories began to change. My sister started giving the monster details. "It has peepee eyes," she said once. "It's poop under its nails. It smells really bad." She wasn't making it up on the fly, these were consistent, the same descriptions over and over. Mum hoped it was a phase, but everything changed the night my sister gave the monster a name. "Her name is Daishi." That's when my mum got worried. We had a black cat then, and every time my sister screamed, my mother would fling open the bedroom door, and the cat would bolt straight under the bed. My mum remembered hearing it scuffing violently beneath the mattress, as if chasing something, always after a scream. "Dashi hates black cats," my sister told her. Eventually, this cat started guarding her at night, curling at her feet, ears perked towards the floor. I've since read that black cats are said to ward off evil. Maybe there's truth to it. According to my sister, Dashi would talk to her all night, every night. Her voice was low and raspy. My sister said she'd smell her first, like something rotting, then hear her voice. Sometimes she'd peer over the edge of the bed and see a pale arm reaching out from the dark. I asked my sister once how she knew what she looked like, and then she said, "Because one time she tricked me." She said she walked into her room and saw our older sister sitting on her bed. That sister lived in Hawaii and only visited occasionally. She was excited, thought she was home, and they played tag for a bit, running in circles around the room. Then our older sister slid under the bed and called out, "It's okay, let's play down here." Of course my sister followed. Under the bed it started tickling. Then it turned to scratching, deep and painful. My sister tried to pull away, but that's when the face started to change. I remember the yellow eyes, and the nails dirty and long. The rest of her face, I can't remember. I don't think I want to. She doesn't know what happened after. It went on like this for months. Every night the voice, the smell, the coaxing. Then suddenly it stopped. The timing was strange. I was born around then, but Dashi never came back. Years later, when I was old enough to understand, my mother told me the rest. She was flipping through one of her old spirit books, a thick, faded volume she had had for years, when she saw something that stopped her cold. The name Daishi. She stared at the page and flipped to the index. The entry was there. Daishi, a demonic entity known to appear before children. Manifestations include a foul odor of decay, yellow eyes, long fingernails, body form unknown. Mum ran to show us. I remember her holding the book, her fingers tight on the edges, her mouth pressed in a line as we read the page together. And then the book vanished. We don't know what happened to it, it was just gone one day. None of us ever found it again. But I know it was real, as I remember the cover, I remember the page, and I remember the way my sister went pale when she saw the name. We still live in that house. I sleep in the same room. My bed sits in the same corner where my sister's once did, against the same wall. Sometimes I wonder why Dashi left when I was born. I've had a few weird happenings over the years, but nothing like what she went through. Nothing like a demon whispering from under my bed. I feel like I have to share this story, not because it's urban legend material, which it is, but because it really happened. Daphne went to my high school. She was 2 years younger than me and we weren't friends, but I knew her name and recognized her face. She was polite, average, and honestly I didn't really know that much about her. This took place maybe 3 years ago in Charlotte, North Carolina, during a bitterly cold winter. She would later say she felt off all night, restless, waking up multiple times to find her blankets kicked off and her body cold. Each time, she'd groggily pull the covers back over herself and drift off again, only for it to happen all over. She figured she was just having a weird night. That's until she remembered shivering awake, her blankets once again down her waist. Still too tired to open her eyes, she lay there trying to figure out why she kept kicking them off. But then she felt something. The blanket was being pulled from the foot of the bed. She opened her eyes and a man was crouched there, holding her blanket in his hands, staring up at her. She screamed, bolted upright and ran straight to her parents' room. Her scream woke the entire household, and by the time her father rushed into her room, the window was open and the man was gone. The police were called immediately. They searched the property and found the window had been pried open from the outside, but that isn't the worst part. Under Daphne's bed, they found several crushed beer cans and a knife. Whoever that man was had been there a while, long enough to drink and to wait and to watch. The implications were horrific. The police could not determine how long he'd been coming to her room at night, or how often he'd hidden there unseen under the mattress where she slept. He was never caught. He disappeared and vanished into the city. Daphne never returned to that bedroom. The family eventually moved and no one really likes to talk about it, especially not Daphne. A few months ago, back when I was still living in my previous house, I had one of the most unnerving things that ever happened to me occur. It was sometime after 2 a.m. The house had settled into that dead, silent stillness where every sound feels amplified. When out of nowhere, 2 hands shot up from underneath the bed. Not from the side, not from the blankets, but from directly under me. Through the slats or the mattress, God knows what. And they grabbed me around the waist. It was so fast and so violent, it didn't even register as fear at first. It felt like someone was hiding under the bed, waiting for the exact moment I was completely relaxed, and then reached straight up to pull me down. I felt everything. The fingers curling in, the palms locking into my sides, and worst of all, the thumbs jabbing hard into the small of my back, like whoever or whatever needed leverage. The pressure wasn't gentle or hesitant. It was firm, deliberate, and almost angry. I shot upright so fast I launched myself off the mattress, and I remember my feet hitting the floor and nearly slipping because adrenaline was hitting me like a freight train. For a split second I stood there frozen, staring at the bed, expecting something to crawl out from underneath it. But the pain didn't fade either. Those 2 thumb-sized spots on my lower back burned like fresh bruises. I went into the bathroom to check, half expecting to see actual marks, but there was nothing visible. I didn't get back on the bed, I didn't even go near it. I dragged a chair into the hallway and sat under the dim light until sunrise because there was no way I was turning my back to that room again in the dark. I tried to explain it away. Sleep paralysis, muscle spasms, a dream that felt too real. But none of those things explain the feeling when something reaches up from under the bed to get a good grip on you. I know it wasn't a dream, but what it was I cannot say. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check under your beds to make sure there's nothing creepy lurking underneath. Don't forget that if you'd like 70% off Patreon, you can grab this exclusive deal until the end of the 12th of December at midnight. Use code GHOST, link in the description. Also, speaking of under the bed, my cats have scratched the hell out of the underneath part of my bed and it is looking bad. I'm gonna have to never let them in the room again. I'd also like to thank my members and patrons whose names can't be seen on screen for their incredibly generous and continued support to help keep things running smoothly over here. And if you'd like to be in their number, don't forget to use code GHOST at checkout for 70% off. But that's it from me, guys. Stay awesome, and I'll see you tomorrow for an absolutely terrifying collection of middle of nowhere stories. Good night.